आए नहीं है ना कोई लकी आए Whoops. Good morning, United Kingdom. Good morning, good morning. And good morning this morning to United Kingdom, an end of another eventful week. Topic for the end of the week. Quite interesting. I'll say, apologies, they say talent can win a match, a game, but teamwork wins the tournament. That's the saying for the weekend. And today's topic is about the rental market. Apparently, there's some good news in the rental market, and the rental market is due to increase. Predictions are, at least in 2022, we're going to see a gradual rise in the rental market and something around the 17% mark, which is good news for landlords and even better news for business as a whole for the UK market. Obviously, a bit difficult for people because if they've got to pay 17% more for tenancies, for rental accommodations, it's going to make it very expensive for them. Where will they go? What will the impact be on local housing authority? Will they increase their rental values? All these questions and many more we will ask Lakhi Singh when he is available. He's not, has he turned up yet? Okay, so we will continue. And as soon as we find the guests for today, we will add them in. So the topic being Geo, and we have now a reconnection. We were just checking where the guests are. Lakhi Singh, obviously, as usual, busy making moves. We have the famous Ninder Singh Johal, who will be joining us. And I think we have Koyona, who was comparing last week. This week she's followed. She's probably been snowed under, as Lakhi says, with lots of work. Okay, so we'll continue with the topic. And as I said, talent wins games, but teamwork wins tournaments. And I agree with it. I mean, I will say that even if it was taken in context of a sport and not of business. Examples of people, lots of examples of people who are talented, but ultimately if all the emphasis is on the talented person, then the team loses because the rest of the team doesn't get that support and they tend to lean on that one talented person. So being talented is got two aspects to it. Either you become extremely vulnerable because everybody wants you to perform and everybody else leans on you. But in another extent, it's all right if you've got a game going on, a separate individual game, a final, or a crucial match to decide something, or to put it in business terms, an important deal to close. Talent is a good thing, excellent, but it can sometimes be a headache as well, or difficult for the individual, because everybody tends to lean on them and there's no intention or inspiration for anybody else to want to learn. So further ado, we will call in the very talented Lakhi Singh, the Rover, Groover, Mover, Hoover, the Smoocher, the Vulture, the Vulture, the Golfer, the Volkswagen of the square mile. Lakhi Singh, good morning, sir. How are you?
I'm very well, thank you. How are you doing?
Excelente. And sir, tell us this morning, what do you say? Talent? You on your own, your talent, is that sufficient to run your businesses? Are you good enough on your own? Or do you think you need a good team and teamwork wins the tournament? Do you think that statement is correct?
Yeah, I think teamwork definitely runs the tournament, so I agree with that statement.
Okay. Yes.
And that's it. I agree with it.
Very short, very exact, very prompt answer, sir. You seem to be in a more diplomatic mood today, as if your answers will be taken across the markets and we will be moving and shaking the property market with your comments. Okay, let me take you across to this news that in 22, we're expected to see a rise of the rental market for up to 17%. Is that something that you can relate to? Do you think that's true, or do you think that's made up?
Haven't really heard of that statistic, so it sounds plausible. But, yeah, I think it is something that's plausible, but all depends on how the market plays out.
Well, what do you say? What do you mean by market play out?
So yeah, I think I'm not sure where that stat comes from, so I don't really know, to be honest.
Okay. Well,
it's not a problem that I need to fix anyway.
Pardon?
It's not a problem that I need to fix.
It's not a problem. Well, what about the local housing authority? Are they going to be giving that increase, do you think, if it does go up to 17? How will it pan out? Is that private tenant? Is that housing authority? What is that 17%? If that happens, how does that have an effect across the market?
I don't really know, to be honest with you.
Sir, it is surprising this morning that you seem very lost. We expected depth of information, like lots of things coming out of your.
No, I'd actually prepared for a different topic today, so I wasn't expected to discuss.
You prepared for a different topic?
Yep. So
okay.
I'd actually sent that to the team, but I don't know. So
what?
I sent that across to the team, but I don't know why they changed it. So.
Probably got lost in translation. You're probably changing the title. Or got lost in translation. Nevertheless, we have Linda Singh, Mr. Johal, backstage. Is that right?
Good morning. Good morning, sir.
Good morning. How are you doing, sir? Kitan?
Well, look, I'll tell you what I'm going to be. I'm driving, but I'm going to be keeping a lookout on petrol stations. And I will tell you if there are queues in petrol stations following yesterday's news about shortage of petrol.
Wow. Yes, there's lots of turbulence in the market at the moment.
Lots of turbulence. Lots of turbulence.
Actually, there's news. Well, it's actually it's been released now that a large real estate company in China has become defaulters, and they've not been able to service bond payments. Now that will normally trigger an interest rate hike. Expected anytime between now and November is going to be important in terms of interest rates possibly being switched on in the United States. Is that right, sir? Do you have that same information?
So you're absolutely right. The inflation figures, particularly around energy, is flying, and we know the energy costs are 300% up. And we know there's a problem generally around supply. Demand is exceeding supply. We know there's a problem around labor shortages. The drivers, lorry drivers, who normally expect 30 grand per year are now getting paid 55 grand a year. So wage costs are going up. Wage costs are going up. Energy costs are going up. General supply shortages mean commodity prices are going up. There's a huge increase in inflation globally. So central banks now have to make a decision. Stuff one is, and I'm not going to go into technicalities, they're going to reduce the amount of quantitative easing. And I think they're going to have to bring up inflation because if they have to bring up interest rates, because if they don't, it could get out of hand and we could all be in trouble. So the likelihood is, although no one has said it in black and white yet, likelihood is end of the year or early part of the year, new year, expect a hike. Now the Chancellor doesn't want it because he's got a huge debt problem, £300 billion in bailing out the UK economy, which all has to be paid with interest. So you can imagine what that will do to his numbers and his planning if interest rates go up. It's his ultimate nightmare.
Wow. Lakhi Singh, what do you have to say to that? Big news, big announcement this morning. Just like going to be like Black Monday, you reckon?
Well, I think we've been predicting it for the last about the last year or so that things are going to tighten. So it's just a matter of time, isn't it? Really, that all the money that's been pumped into the UK economy is going to get somewhat run out, and then it's going to have an impact. So it's not something that anybody's surprised at, I don't think.
Well, it was interesting.
Okay, yes.
If I could just jump in for a second. Yeah, if I could just jump in for a second. You know when we've been back to Friday, year off, and of course the panic was around furlough. The panic was around huge unemployment. The panic was around deflation, and there were negative interest rates because they thought prices would drop. And of course, we find ourselves in the complete reverse. We find ourselves with labor shortages, unemployment, and we find ourselves at the end of a huge rise in prices. It's the complete reverse of what we've all been speaking about and commentating about during the crisis. It's extraordinary. Over to you.
Well, maybe it's an indicator. A lot of the forecasting that happens at a lower level means nothing, and the controls are with another group of people who've decided to switch on an international recession or depression now, because that sort of like fits in with the storm that was created during and just after the First World War, when they had the Great Depression, and gearing up just before the Second World War. and I think it's just too coincidental that it's identical. It's happening in the same way. Lakhi Singh, what do you say, sir? Lakhi Singh, you are muted. You'd be kindly invited to make comment, please. Obviously is lost somewhere in translation. We will continue. Right, okay. So it's a big shock because what they're saying is, sir, that there may be a default in bond payments to the creditors for China. Now, what implication or impact will that have on the market, sir?
Well, firstly, it's interesting. I think firstly we're going to see the reaction of the Chinese government. Because what we remember is the China economy, in the way it's governed, is different to most Western economies. Now, there was a survey yesterday about talking to various banks as to how exposed they were, and most banks were saying it's just part of a normal risk portfolio. So there wasn't any indication from them. But it's what you said earlier, Mr. Vijay, is the sentiments. What do people think is going to happen? I just have this funny feeling. It's a Chinese business. It's in the Chinese economy. I think the Chinese, that's the Chinese authorities, will probably, and I'll use the word carefully, persuade their banks to make sure that any debts are honored. I don't think the banks will be happy, but as I said, the Chinese economy is governed differently to most Western economies. I don't.
Isn't it a repeat though, Ninda? Isn't it not a repeat of NRAM and the failure of Northern Rock and the collapse of Mortgage Express? Is it just not a repeat of that?
Oh, listen, absolutely. And you know, this is not going to be the first and the last corporate failures we're going to see. And you know, I say often, Mr. Vijay, I say often to small businesses who try and hanker up to the big corporate accounts. And I say to them, don't take, of course you should deal with corporates. No, I'm not saying you shouldn't, but don't put as much emphasis as you think you should, because when they go in a big way. And if you rely totally on big corporates, they will wipe you out because they have no sentiments towards the economy they operate in. They have no allegiance to the community with which they work in. So I do say to small businesses, ensure you've got a wide spread of customers, both corporate but also small businesses. So you're right, Mr. Vijay, this will not be the first and this will not be the last corporate failure we'll see.
So are we going to go back to horse and cart syndrome and go back to having lots of sheep or goats around and trading with livestock? Do you expect to be trading in chickens next year?
Well, I'm sure life used to be much easier, much more predictable than it is in a globally connected world we now live in. And of course, I think what we can look forward to is electric cars, electric trucks, and everything electric. So the horse and cart.
By the way, guys, we've also got Koena on the show. Not sure if you know that Koena's on. So shall we introduce her as well?
I'm comparing. I'll be able to control if I achieve that.
Okay, I thought I'd just let you know anyway, Vijay, that she's on. Okay.
So yeah, latecomers will be treated with the same contempt as everybody else. Okay, sir, let me continue the conversation. Ninda, sir, my question is, do you see us going back? I mean, are you going to be like a million chickenaire next year? Do you think yourself you're going to go into poultry and livestock and pay for your car battery with chickens?
Well, Mr. Vijay, there's a rumor in the market that there will be no chicken around Christmas because of supply problems.
Right.
So I'm afraid we may not have any chickens to trade.
Wow, okay, right. So we've got another bit of news as well. No chicken for Christmas. Turkey, is that still on? Are you going to be a Turkey millionaire?
No. The Turkish problem is going to be the same. It's just going to be a general food supply problem around Christmas.
Wow, it's a bit like the developed world going back into, going back into the basics, isn't it? Becoming a third world country. I mean, it's only going to be people who can afford to pay £5 or £10 for a cup of coffee, who are actually going to be able to go out anywhere. Everybody else is going to be living on bread and water. Lakhi Singh, what do you have to say to that? Lakhi Singh? Mr. Singh? Unmute, sir. You're muted.
Are you talking about no chickens and no turkeys?
Well, no chicken, no turkey, sir. Are we going back to the Stone Age? Is it back to the future? Are we going back into the Stone Age in the developed economy? Are we not going to be able to afford that treasured cup of coffee for lunch? It's going to be too expensive for us. I mean, I can imagine a cup of coffee ending up being around the £10 mark. Is that something you could see happening, Lakhi Singh?
Well, it's happened in Japan before, and that's quite a developed economy. So anything can happen, because if you've got something like Brexit's just happened, you've got obviously COVID-19, and now also all the impacts of all the government loans and the pulling of a lot of those loans and furlough this month. So I think anything's on the cards, really.
With that, before we have question back to Sir Ninderji, we'll invite in our very late host and compere, Kiona. Can we have her on, please? Is she available?
Hi, Vijay.
Morning, Kiona.
Good morning.
How are you doing? You said you got a very sore throat. It sounds as if you're not well.
Yeah, just battling a little bit of flu, but all good. How are you, Steve? How are you, Vijay?
Yes.
How are you staying there?
I'm good. Lakhi Singh's good. We have Ninder Singh on as well. And I'm going to hand over the reins to Kiona for you to continue the topic. And just for your note, Kiona, the topic is that having talent is all good and well for an individual match or game. Really, teamwork is what wins the tournament. And secondly, the topic for today is 2022 rental prices go up to 17.5%. Your show, baby. Take over.
Firstly, I would like thank you, Vijay. Firstly, I would like to say that my take on the fact that on the quote of the day, which is team is supreme, genuinely, because when we are talking about team, we are looking more into comparative advantages over than absolute advantage. So individual, I think in team, everybody is good at something, and when that collates, I think the results are far better than on relying on just one person for the results for the yield. So I think definitely talent is all good, but not just like one person. Like one person, it's always better to have a team to back you up and make you win the show. Did we just lose Vijay? Hello.
Hi, yes, Kiona.
Did we just lose? Did I lose
you
everybody?
haven't lost me. I have handed over the controls to you.
Yeah.
Take topic forward. You have yourself and you have two very charming, very intellectual individuals to spar with. You will not need me. I shall probably be in, as they say, kebab mein haddi. I will leave you here to battle with the famous Ninder Singh Johal and Lakhi Singh, the property fixer. So I bid farewell.
All right. So Hi, Lakhi. Hi, Ninda. Ninda, this is the first time we are interacting. How are you this morning?
Yes, good morning to you. I'm driving, and just for your info, I've driven past 4 petrol stations, and there were no queues. So there you go. So despite the media shouting its mouth off all evening about big crisis around petrol, it doesn't become. It's not apparent to me here driving along in Birmingham, the Black Country. But good to speak to you both.
It's good that you're giving us information right behind me and giving us drive from the field. But I would like to ask you about. I have been informed that you are organizing something really, really important, something really exciting, something really big next month. So, mind sharing a few more details about the event that's in November?
Yep. So we're bringing the Signature Awards to London for the first time, and it's an event happening on the 5th of November. So thank you for the question. 5th of November at the London Hilton Park Lane, and there's 3 elements to it. We'll have a fantastic, great networking up. 500 of the movers and shakers from London and the Midlands will be in the room. And then, of course, we celebrate the best of the best, and we give out some award on the night to those who've performed in what was really been a testing 18 months. And that's what's happening. It's a black tie event, red carpet, and we'll have some fantastic food and some fantastic entertainment lined up.
That sounds really lush and definitely like something to look forward to, because I think after a year of not having events, last year was so drab, there was nothing, and this sounds really exciting. The black and tie, that sounds expensive as well. But moving on to Lakhi, I would ask, like, I want Lakhi, hi, how are you this morning?
I'm very well, thank you. How are you doing?
I'm good. So the topic that Vijay left us with is a rise in the rental income. What I had read a Savil's report yesterday in the morning, which claimed that the increase in housing prices and rental prices are pretty much going to be in line with the rise in the income of an average British national. So what is your take on that? Do you think that income is also going to rise, or as Salim said, that we are gonna probably get back into the medieval age where we're gonna just transact goats and livestock in terms of poultry, in terms of trade?
To be honest, I'm not really that technical on what's going to happen, but I think things are definitely going to change. I think if you've got inflation and you've got higher wages, it doesn't necessarily mean anything. It just means that everything's also a lot more expensive. So technically, it could actually be a situation where things get a lot worse. They get a lot more expensive, double the prices, but triple the prices and double the income. So if that happens, then technically everybody's going to be a lot worse off.
That's unlike you. You're not diplomatic at all, and we're gonna be worse off, and that's the prediction that comes from Lakhi Singh. So I would like to ask the same question, Ninda. Do you think that the income price, because in the past 10 years, the rentals and the mortgage rates have gone up by 72% in the London in London city primarily. So this prediction comes in that by 2022 there's going to be a rise in the rentals as well, and it's going to get more expensive. Do you think that because of geopolitical events like Brexit, which is one of the prime events in the history of the European Union and England, do you think that this is gonna also impact on the price levels? Yes, on the income of an average British national, so we can keep up, or it's going to be a global financial crisis in the UK as well? Ninder, are you there with us?
Yeah, sorry. I'll be addressing that to Lakhi. So just repeat the question. I think I caught some of the question. Just repeat the question again.
So do you think that the income for an average British national is gonna rise alongside the price levels, or it's gonna be a crisis and we're gonna be worse off, as Lakhi just said?
Okay, so a couple of things. If we look at property prices, a demand for property can also be determined by the interest rates. So if interest rates are going up, suddenly debt is more expensive, and that might depress the demand for houses because people are thinking, oh, hold on, I'm going to pay a lot more for my mortgage now. So that's the first implication. The second implication, and Lakhi Singh is absolutely right. If your wages are increasing, they're only increasing, and they'll only be of increase to benefit to you if the other prices remain the same. So if your cost of living is going up, in other words, it's costing you more to buy products, then your increase in wage is just offsetting it. So you don't really have a real benefit in terms of what you're being paid and what you're spending. In terms of Brexit, so a couple of things have happened. Because we now have a shortage of labour, so in other words, we don't have as many Europeans in this country as we used to have, for example, our drivers and other labour shortages. It means one of two things will happen. Our employers have to increase wages to attract the indigenous population of the people living in this country and say to them, right, we'll pay you more because the Europeans aren't here anymore. That will lead to inflation because the people are paying more, being paid more money. Then it becomes a virtual circle, just keeps going around in circles. The big question is, to what extent does Brexit affect the rest of the globe? Well, actually, the rest of the globe doesn't care. The rest of the globe didn't care about Brexit. That's just an issue between the EU and the UK. But what you are finding globally now, because of politics, geopolitics, that countries are grouping together. So recently we heard about the UK, US, and Australia doing a deal together. We're now hearing that India and a couple of other countries, I can't remember who they were now, excluding China, are now doing deals together. They're all trying to marginalize China. So if there is something, it's China versus the rest in terms of global trade. And I think there's one thing I would also say. It's interesting, we've been discussing this morning about inflation, we've been discussing this morning about labor shortages, we've been discussing about energy prices, we've been discussing the fact that there's no fuel, we're talking about maybe food shortages. Interesting that that's what we're now talking about, whereas Lakhi Singh will know, 9 months ago, the economy was on its knees, people were dying, people in hospitals. And it's an interesting contrast in discussion. And it'd be interesting to how do we think which of the two is worse. Our conversation 9 months or a year ago to where we are today. And of course, I'll leave with this final comment. Most commentators will say this is a perfect storm. This is what we did expect as the economy started to open up and demand, that latent demand now, meaning that prices are going up. Brexit didn't help, no doubt about it. But I think in the long term, not short term, long term, 9 months maybe, things will return back to normal as supply and demand sorts itself out. Over to you.
Okay, that's really insightful, Ninda. But also to Lakhi and Ninda, the next question that I would like to pose is, we have been discussing about labor shortage, but I want to say that I am from India, right? So I see that Priti Patel, Home Office, and the UK, the government in general, they have been launching a lot of attractive schemes to attract talent from globally, from outside, especially from India. I have noticed that there are a lot of talent has been flowing in recently after Brexit, basically, and after COVID. Like after COVID, I can't say that COVID is over yet, but we are somewhat, touch wood, in the middle of a situation. So do you think that European talent and Indian talent are of no match from an employer's perspective? That's something I would like to know. Over to you, Lakhi, first. Lakhi, you there with us?
Sorry, I just missed that question. Just had something in the background happen. Just explain that. Just say that again. Sorry.
Yeah, we have been talking about labor shortage. As Ninda correctly pointed out, there are not as many Europeans as there used to be in the UK after Brexit. So but there have been schemes to attract talent overseas. So I'm from India. I can speak about India. The Home Office, Priti Patel, and Boris Johnson, they have been launching schemes to attract overseas talent. So do you think that European talent or British talent and Indian talent has far, there's a difference in their skills? And as an employee, from an employer's perspective in the UK, do you think that you would rather employ somebody from Europe is aware of the ways, or do you think in people new people can also be inundated and they can take up the reins as well?
That's a very big question. It's quite a loaded question, actually. So I think it all depends. So if you're recruiting the very top end, like CEOs of a global multi-billion-pound corporation, you're probably beginning to notice that a lot of the top talent is from India, but they're very experienced people. But at the lower level, call centers and other areas where the costs are cheaper, there's a lot of outsourcing going on. So I don't think there's a sort of it's an easy answer because technically in the IT side, India probably has some of the best brains, but across the board, maybe in sales or marketing, where the language skills are more westernized, I think on those sort of sectors, I think localized or people from the local country tend to possibly be a better place. So it's not easy one to answer because you get a lot of dynamic people also from India who are also good at sales. They may not be so locally accustomed to the language and the ways of the UK, but they do adapt very quickly. So I think that'd be my answer.
Interesting. Ninda, do you want to chime in?
Yeah, I think Lakhi Singh's right. I think it depends on the job. I think it depends on the complexity of the job. It depends on the international dimension of the job. Is it a global job? Is it a local job? I think that people are people. You can find talent from all around the globe. I don't think it's necessarily one particular country. I think a lot of this also depends on government legislation, whether government now thinks, Grand Chaps was challenged this morning as to whether, because of the shortages in lorry drivers, whether they were prepared to let the Europeans back into the country to fill some of those roles, and he was non-committal. So I think whilst, talent management is essential, that's partly governed by government policy as to how difficult it is to bring people in. And I was talking to a friend of mine who runs a major haulage business, and he said he was trying to get paperwork so that he could train Indian drivers, so get some Indians over here to get them to, do some of the haulage work. But the government has made it virtually impossible to do because of the paperwork and the requirements. So a lot of this talent question you're asking is also partly down to government policy, and that may determine the type of person you can or cannot employ.
Definitely. Definitely. That's a really interesting point, because I think that it's all in the paper and all in the very, very nascent stage where basically you're like, yeah, we are top talent, but the schemes are like, when you go and you click on them on the government websites, it's like it's still under process. Like we are still deciding on the factors, so everything is still in developmental stage, and the shortage that you're talking about is very imminent. Like now, it's happening now. And but as Ninda say, that 9 months from now we might be looking at a very different scenario, because 9 months from here, like back in 9 months from back in 2020, we were sitting and we were discussing COVID, and the uncertainty was at its all-time high. So things are looking up. And on that note, I would want Lakhi Singh. Are you there with us? So your screen keeps on freezing.
I'm here, yeah.
Yeah, you're on mute. So I assume that you have a set of questions for Ninda regarding his event, and we have been really excited, Ninda, just to say that we have been looking at I looked at the brochure back in India, and I was like, that's something I really want to attend. And can you shed some more light on the speakers, the intricacies, the details that is not on the brochure? Because Lakhi and we have been really excited about the event, and same as and Vijay in the background as well. I don't know if he will be able to attend, but we would love for him to attend. But Lakhi and I can confirm that we are definitely attending the event. So, Ninda, would you want to speak about the speakers, a few more details about the event?
Yeah. So the event's about discussing topics that are current today, and we've covered quite a few of them today. And so what's really good about our events, and we do one in Birmingham, we do one in Wolverhampton and one in Leicester, is that we normally attract a very diverse audience. We attract entrepreneurs, influential entrepreneurs, we attract policymakers, senior politicians, and obviously the capital is where Parliament is based. So we're hoping to have a couple of really senior politicians in the room. And obviously there's plenty of time for networking, learning from other people, learning from a keynote speaker whose identity will be revealed on Monday. But one of the keynote speakers who will be speaking will be Lord Billamaria, the chair of Cobra, and he's one of our sponsors on the night, Cobra Beer. They've been sponsoring us for quite a few years. So yeah, the room will be full of all the sort of who's who of business. And you know, if you're interested in growing a business, then there's a saying, isn't it, that your network is your net worth. And again, I was with a very successful restaurateur last night, and he acknowledged that he hadn't really made much use of networking, and he now felt that his business was growing sufficiently that he needed to spend more time looking outside of the business than working inside it, and which I think is the right thing for him to do. And so really, events like mine give you an opportunity to meet people outside your sector, people who can help you to reshape the way you're thinking about your business, maybe give you insights into how other sectors are working, and you can always learn something from another sector. And we can all be better at what we do. And if we're better at what we do, then turnover goes up, our profits go up, and with that we invest back in the business. But more importantly, we're likely to employ more people, and therefore make the community with which we operate a lot more sustainable. Over to you.
That's really interesting, and it's really endorsing the fact that the one thing that you say, that your network is your network. I think that resonates with the very connected, the super connected Lakhi Singh, because most of the days he's connected with, I think, half of London, all high net risers. So Lakhi, are you looking forward to the Signature Awards this year? I know you are, but what are your thoughts?
I'm feeling quite hungry actually, so already thinking about the 3-course meal. So, Aninda, who's actually making the food for us? Is that by your very fair hands? Or?
Yeah, it's a 4-course meal. The caterers are
4-course, okay.
Madhus. Yeah, it's a 4-course meal. We're at Madhus. They're doing the catering, and of course at Park Lane Hilton, it's a top 5-star hotel. It's in the middle of Mayfair, around the corner from you, Park Lane. So we're expecting the very, very best to be in attendance, with solid senior politicians and great entrepreneurs too.
Fantastic. So is the guest speaker Colin Billamaria confirmed now? Or?
Oh, he's confirmed. We're just getting a second confirmation on another keynote speaker. Yeah, Lord Billamaria will definitely be speaking. Okay,
now how's it going with the choosing the applicants and the sectors that you're going to be giving awards in? That'd be quite interesting for our viewers to know. So if anybody wants to apply,
yeah, well,
they should actually get in contact with.
Yeah, so entries are still coming in. So
is there a website they can go to apply to be nominated for the award?
Yeah, it's www.natural, which is NACHURAL.co.uk.
Okay, fantastic. And what are the 4 or 5 sectors for the awards? Is there I suppose you probably got is it like a young entrepreneurs of the year, like somebody like myself?
Yeah. Well, you're far too young. So we've just been speaking about global economics. So we have an international category of people who are selling internationally. We know that 80% of the UK economy is service-led. So we have customer service of the year. We know that London is one of the top cities for tech. So we have a tech startup category. We also know London has the greatest number of startups in general. So we have a startup category. Obviously, we have an Entrepreneur of the Year award. London is the financial capital of the world. So we'll have categories for finance, legal, property. We're in a world where we need to acknowledge diversity and inclusion. So we have a category for Business Woman of the Year. We also know that lots of businesses fly because of the people that work within them. And these are business leaders who work for business. So we have a Business Person of the Year. And of course, we can't forget the last 18 months. A lot of people have gone out of their way to help the community with which they live and operate in. So we have a Community Excellence Award of the Year too. So lots and lots of awards. Not that many as others. So I think there's only about 14 in total. And it just means that we have a brilliant evening celebrating the very, very best for what has been a very difficult 18 months. And as I said earlier, yeah, you know, we've been talking about a lot of problems today, but you know something, that is nothing compared to what we were talking about only 10 months, 11 months ago. Quite frankly, the global economy was on its knees. So we have much to celebrate. And of course, in the UK, we forget that entrepreneurs and business are the lifeblood of any economy. It's not government that's going to get out of any mess. It's business and it's people that work in business. Over to you. Sorry. I've just... It's green light. Nobody's been moving. I'm stuck behind a... Can you believe it? I'm stuck behind a tractor. It's a bloody big tractor, honestly. What's he doing on the main roads?
I think maybe Vijay Sal was saying earlier about you know, us going back to farming days and having to go back to.
Yeah.
I think it's already. Well, there may not be a queue. There may not be a petrol queue, but there's definitely a potato shortage now. So the tractors are out.
Yeah, the tractors are definitely. I cannot believe there's a tractor on the road. But anyway, there you go. Oh, by the way, I'm driving to the race course because I know we're about Signature Awards, but we have a similar event happening in Wolverhampton next Friday. And interesting, look, we spoke about this, about people's appetite to come out to events and when the events are going to come back. Well, the Wolverhampton show is now sold out. We have 500 people coming to the black tie event, so I fully expect the London event all to sell out, because people are keen to go and meet in face-to-face situations.
That's something that Ninda said. The fact that Ninda say that exactly, you know, I think back in when I come around last month, there was a festival. There was a festival, and people were really paranoid about COVID because the cases were rising on a very steep slope. And some of the teenagers were interviewed that are not scared of COVID. They're like, the effect that COVID has had on mental health, we would rather, and now that we are doubly jabbed, we would rather go out and have fun with our friends than to worry about COVID, because we have done our part. We have taken the vaccine, so we are like, we cannot expect a fatality in our condition. But at the same time, it is really good for mental health. So the fact that Ninda is organizing events and they're getting sold out is still a key factor, that people are dying to go out, get back to normal, see people, meet, and make up for lost time.
Yeah, well, absolutely. I mean, Lakhi Singh and I and Mr. Vijay, we did speak. I think it was about 4 months ago, Lakhi, where we did question the future of events. We questioned the future of, you know, people meeting face to face. We talked about the sort of increase and acceleration of digitization, and whether we'd ever go back to events again, and whether 2021 was the year or whether it's going to be 2022. And we did start to predict it before, like, at the early part of, I think, January, February, we thought we might be able to sneak something in 2021. And of course, everybody expects the economy to recover probably around 2023. And of course, we could talk for a long time on whether the recovery was a W or a V shape or a K shape. But obviously, the economy is now improving. It's going to plateau off, obviously, as we get back to normal. But I'd just like to repeat, I will take today's problems much more readily than the ones Lakhi Singh and Vijay Sal and I were speaking about no more than 12 months ago. Over to you.
I think that's a very fair statement. But at the same time, like events and the fact that I remember that at one point events and hospitality, they were in shreds because there was no events, and everybody, the travel industry, the event industry, the hospitality sector in general, we had the uncertainty was at its peak, but the things are looking up, and see, we have a crowd of 500 and 1,000 people coming to events and just celebrating life. And I think that's a relief that that if we can overcome that, we can overcome anything, as because COVID was a global thing. Not one single country was spared from the spite of COVID. So I think things are definitely same. There was a point we were discussing the new normal, and we thought that the new normal is here to stay. Masks are here to stay. We are here to stay. But at the same time, like, things getting back to normal is definitely a sign of relief.
I think.
Lakhi Singh.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think I was just going to add another comment. Is I think a number of people have said, and it'll be good to hear what Lakhi thinks, but a number of people have said the narrative has changed now. It's no longer about a pandemic. It's now called endemic. So in other words, we've just got to live with this now. And if you're double vaxxed, your chance of dying are now really remote. If you're double vaxxed, the chance of being hospitalized have been reduced. And if you're double vaxxed, then, as I said, the chance of dying are really small. So we've just got to now get on with it, I think. We've just got to live with it now. It's yet another variant of the flu that we've got to live with. And I think, variants will continue to come. And I think medicine's job will now be on top of it. And one thing is for certain now, is that uncertainty will always be the norm. But as entrepreneurs, we are used to uncertainty. We were certainty, but we're used to uncertainty. So I think that's the new norm. The new norm is uncertainty, to say. Over to you.
Yeah, so I think uncertainty is the norm. We don't really know what's around the corner. There's certain rumors of, it's probably an interesting question to ask you, Ninder. Do you think there's any likelihood of any other lockdown? And maybe, I can't really see anything happening in the next couple of months, but maybe around Christmas time, do you see if there's a peak? Do you think the government will do another lockdown?
No, I don't think they'll do another lockdown. I think the boosters have started. People have started having boosters. I think the only way it can happen, and you know this, Lakhi Singh, is if the NHS comes under pressure. Now, the problem with that comment that I've just made is that, Lakhi Singh, you and I know that every Christmas and winter, the NHS always comes under pressure because of the flu. We hear stories every year about people lying in trolleys, dying in trolleys. So the question now is, this year, if the hospitals get overwhelmed, is that COVID, or is that always happens every year? So that's the question that the ministers will have to decide. Is this the norm? In other words, every year it happens, or is being exacerbated by COVID? My gut feeling, and it's just a gut feeling, I'm not a scientist and I'm not in government, my gut feeling is they will avoid a lockdown like, I was just going to say, like the plague. Maybe not the right use of words, but they're not going to have a lockdown. I think they might introduce measures such as masks and things like that, but there will be no lockdown. I cannot see a lockdown. I can't see that happening. In fact, if anything, they're opening up the airways. More countries are coming onto the amber and the green list.
Well, that's actually really good news. I think pretty amazing that we could start potentially look to travel again, because they're actually making that a lot easier. I think as it's about 7 days ago, wasn't it? About literally Friday last week, wasn't it? That they decided to make it a lot easier.
That's right, and I think one of the things around that is one of confidence and perception, and I think as you start to loosen restrictions, then people's confidence goes up, and they start to believe that it's good to go out. And then, of course, now here's the bit that I'm not a But here's the bit that is really interesting is, as we all go out more and more, actually, are we building herd immunity? Could it be that we're all out and about, and maybe we're all getting it, but we don't know we've got it? And I was speaking to an Indian yesterday, and asked him how India was coping, and he said two very interesting comments. One is they were vaccinating like crazy, so they were vaccinating 10 million people a day. But secondly, he thought the other reason why infections were down was he genuinely believed they've got herd immunity. So I think the more and more, and I'm going to say this with real a lot of caveats, but the more and more we mix, provided we've been double vaxxed, I think we're building herd immunity. But I'm no scientist, so don't quote me on that.
Do you think it could be lost in translation? Because in India, maybe somebody thinks the word herd is H-E-A-R-D, so they heard it's immunity, or do you think it got lost in translation?
Lakhi Singh, you know, I haven't decided my comedian for the night on the 5th of November. Maybe it could be you.
Okay, well, you heard it here first. There you go, double whammy, same joke.
Double whammy indeed. Oh, and by the way, I've reached the reason why it seems all calm now. I've reached the race course, and in about 4 minutes I'll be leaving you both to go and attend my meeting. We're doing a last meeting just to check everything's okay for next week.
The fact that you're not behind a tractor anymore, you definitely do sound a lot relaxed.
No, but what's really interesting actually, I've lost the tractor, but as I'm at a race course, I can see, this is so strange, I can see another 3 tractors. I don't know what we're doing at a race course. It looks like VJ Sell's comment's going to come back to haunt me here.
Well, is it about 10 tractors now?
Well, no, I can only, I don't know why we have 3 tractors. Maybe they've got an agricultural show coming up. Who knows?
Or maybe
VJ's words are always a bit eerie. Whatever he says, it sort of somehow comes true. So just be careful when you listen to him.
No, that's fine. Well, look, both of you, I've got dash now. It's been great speaking to you both. And I look forward to seeing you on the 5th of November. I'm sure we're going to speak well before then again.
We'll be speaking definitely later on today as well. But thank you, Linda.
Catch up later. Cheers. Thank you very much. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye. That brings us to the conclusion of the show, Lakhi Singh. And
we've got another 2 minutes, I believe.
Yes, we've got another 2 minutes, and I would quickly like to ask you that with one of the prime things that I had prepared for today was the fact that they say that a correction is around the corner, and you have been saying the correction is around the corner. But one of the reports I was reading yesterday as well would say that this has been a legacy of the global financial crisis, that as the rates grow up, as the rates go up, at the same time, things do find, it's like demand and supply do eventually find each other, and everything's going to be quite sublime in no matter of time. Do you think it's going to be of like 2000, 2008, 2007, 2008 crisis, or it's going to be as colossal, or it's going to be like far more toned down this year, the correction?
I think if anything, based upon all the parameters, it could actually be a lot worse, because 2007, 2008, it was a interest rate hike by a couple of percent. And that's, I think it was like 1% went up to about 2 to 3% by a couple of percent. And that was enough to scare a lot of banks and literally make property prices fall by literally something like 20 to 40% in certain areas of the country. So, I mean, it could be worse. So I think the better thing to do, like anything, even with COVID-19, is it's just you have to plan and look at the risks, and it's better to look at the worst case scenario than to look at the best case scenario. So I think property prices could fall as much as 40 to 50%, and if everybody looks at things from that point of view, then at least they can take preemptive measures. But if they don't, then and they're looking at things optimistically or being nonchalant about what could happen, then they are only themselves to blame, because they're not looking at all the potential market factors, because anything can really happen, really, couldn't it? So I think one's always got to be looking at the risk of any business and any hole in a business at any given time.
As Linda said, uncertainty is the norm. So with that, we've come to the end of the show. And yeah, so we're going to see you next week, Monday, same time.
Okay, great. Well, Kana, thank you very much.
All right. Bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.